Wood.
Here.
Councillor Stephen Canning.
Present, thanks.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
I'm here, thanks, Julie.
Councillor John McFadden.
Here.
Councillor John McGee.
Here.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Maureen Mackay. Understand Councillor Mackay may be having some IT issues. Councillor David Richardson.
Present, Julie.
Thank you. Councillor James Adams. Councillor Lillian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Ian Linton.
Here.
Councillor Douglas Reid.
Here.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Here, thanks.
Councillor Graham Boyd. Councillor Barry Douglas.
Here.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Here, thanks.
Councillor Peter Maben.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Beverly Clark.
Here.
Councillor Sally Cogley.
Here.
Councillor Kevin McGregor.
Here, thank you.
Councillor Linda Maben.
Here, thanks, Julie.
Deputy Provost Claire Lynch.
Here, Julie feels.
Councillor William Lennox.
On in here.
Councillor Alison Simmons.
Here.
Councillor Billy Crawford.
Here.
Councillor June Kyle.
Present.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Here, Julie, thanks.
Councillor Neil Watts.
Hi, here, Julie.
I have an apology from Councillor Drew Filson, Councillor Jennifer Hogg,
I'm here, thank you.
and Councillor Elaine Stewart.
Yep, I'm here, Julie, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay. I'll just keep an eye out for Councillor Mackay joining. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, folks. We're going to get into the next part. That is declarations of interest. If anybody has, Councillor Friel.
This is a declaration of interest just for transparency for item 3B, paper A2, the leisure and culture. I don't think anybody here doesn't know that Chief Officer is my daughter, but I don't think that precludes me from taking part.
Councillor McGregor.
Thanks, Provost. Also, just for transparency, just to note my sister's position as a team leader within Vibrant Communities, but also I don't think that would preclude me as well. So thank you.
Thank you, folks. Into item 2. This is the Community Plan Review and Local Outcomes Improvement Plan for 24. Oh, Councillor McFadden, no, thank you. John?
Yeah, just for transparency, my daughter works for the catering service, so I'm sure that makes no odds to what I'm doing here today. Thanks.
Thanks for that, John. Yeah, thank you. I think everybody's okay. Thank you. So it's the Community Plan Review and Local Outcomes Improvement Plan 24 to 27. I'll ask Ian to introduce this paper. Ian.
Thanks, Provost. Good morning, members. This report presents for members' consideration the outcomes from the Community Plan Review that's been undertaken over the last 6 months. The outcomes and related recommendations from the review were approved by the Community Planning Partnership Board at its meeting on 13th June 2024 and are presented to elected members today for endorsement by Council. As members will be aware, community planning in East Ayrshire is based on a 3-yearly review cycle, and this latest review has informed the development of an updated local outcomes improvement plan, and it's also enabled the identification of new and emerging strategic priorities for the next 3 years. Stakeholders from across the Council and our wider community planning partnership have engaged constructively and extensively throughout the review process. The updated Local Outcomes Improvement Plan is presented at Appendix 1, which is page 8 of your papers. This is a performance framework that underpins the work of the partnership and has developed around a smaller number of high-level measures, building on a strengthened partnership approach to data, aligned to the Council's data and analytics strategy that was approved last year by members, and uses a more visual approach to presenting performance trends. Appendix 2, Provost, page 23 of your papers, presents the Community Plan Review Supplement that has been developed to complement our 15-year community plan with the aim of articulating the current strategic context within which our partnership activity is being delivered and reflecting the key challenges and opportunities that have emerged as we look ahead to the next 3 years. The review supplement sets the strategic direction for the Council and the partnership and describes the 4 priority areas of growth, well-being, fairness and sustainability that will help focus the thematic delivery action plans. Importantly, the strategic direction articulated within the review supplement and updated LOIP has also informed the Council's programme of cross-cutting reviews that follow on the agenda for today's meeting. Provost, with those introductory comments, the recommendations are presented for members' consideration at paragraph 2, page 3 of your papers, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ian. The recommendations are there, folks. I'm going to open it up for any comments, any questions. Any online? Okay, folks, we're accepting the recommendations.
Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ian. You go off for that one. So item 3, this is the cross-cutting reviews and strategic framework. Can inform members and officers that there was a request for a deputation from the trade unions. That has been withdrawn. So we're going to the cross-cutting reviews and strategic framework reports. There's different parts to this report, so I'm going to suggest that we accept each individual part, and then we can have questions or comments after each individual part, so we don't lose the thought process. Is that okay, folks?
Yeah.
And I'll ask Eddie to introduce.
Thanks very much, Provost. Good morning, members. The previous paper there that Ian presented, and you can see the detail in that, talks about the ambition that we continue to have for our local communities here in East Ayrshire, both as a council and with partners. At the same time, last week at Cabinet and this week at GNS, we'll look at our end of year position in terms of our finance and our services. And although the council overall comes in with a balanced budget, inside some of these services, we can see massive pressure. That dilemma, a match and ambition with the resources available to us is not new to us. And indeed, it's something that was anticipated. And it's with that as a background that council tasked officers to carry out a number of these cross-cutting reviews of functions to ensure that we are cohesive, we're coordinated, and we're outcomes focused in people in their communities rather than output targets often set externally for individual services. I've deliberately used the word functions and cross-cutting reviews because this here is not about a review of any individual service. It's about how we interact with our communities that are delivered across a variety of our services and partners. We know that through our medium-term financial plan that we need to achieve a reduction over the next 2 years and spend £27 million. What we're trying to do here is mitigate the impact of that on people and communities in East Ayrshire. The end of year position shows that our big services are under severe financial and service pressure. Education, the Health and Social Care Partnership, wage, roads, and we've seen the work we've had to do to draw back a bit on the capital programme. Still ambitious in terms of what we'll look to deliver, but done in a different way, just the same as some of our revenue budgets are going to have to be done in a different way. A summary of the context, both local and national, of what we're operating is provided in paragraph 66 at page 6 of the Coven report, with the Scottish and UK government priorities, local government funding, demography and demand. So it was with that background, that council tasked us to go out and do a number of cost-cutting reviews in terms of partnership working in infant, children and young people services, in leisure and culture, in financial inclusion, employability and wellbeing. At this stage, we're coming back with the best professional advice of officers to council And in many instances, what we're doing is we're seeking now authority from council that this is the right direction of travel, that we can go out now and fully consult and engage around the proposals we're bringing forward. There's some other areas that are really management actions in terms of how we organise ourselves and we'll be able to take forward immediately. But they're ones that are substantive in terms of our workforce or changing how we do services, then we need to go out and do that full engagement and consultation. If we cannot innovate, if we cannot do things differently, there's a risk, a high risk, that will be required to focus all our council resources on our statutory duties. Our duty to protect and educate our children, to provide adult social care to meet needs of older people and disabled people, our duties as a housing authority, our duties to collect waste, to keep our roads safe. We'll shrink to a position where all that work that we want to do in terms of prevention and early intervention, we're simply not able to do because we need to carry out the essentials. So we need to do something differently. The papers brought today are not about cuts, but I have to be honest, that's going to come later. There's no way we can take £27 million out the budget here without us actually reducing what we do or reducing the workforce in what we do. But today it's not about this. Today is about making our service effective, focused as it can be, and where possible protecting the preventive and early intervention approaches that we've developed. The overview of the reports that you have in front of you is set out at paragraph 15 in terms of where we'll go through the cross-cutting reviews one at a time as Provost advised. There's then short commentary on the 3 other reviews that are service reviews that you know are out there in terms of waste, additional support needs and early years. And then there's that background I spoke about in terms of our strategic framework for us there. And finally, a brief update in terms of early intervention and innovation fund and the implications all of this may have in terms of our future direction of structure. With the opening comments, Provost, if it's okay with you, I'll just continue on and I'll move on to talk a bit about the review of partnership working in infant, children and young people services. For all of our reviews, our cross-cutting reviews, there is a sponsor from the corporate management team. Working alongside them is a lead officer to actually carry out the review. And they've all been supported by the Programme Management Office, Finance, HR, where appropriate. So my thanks in this review to Sina Curry and David for Programme Management Office who have supported me as the lead officer in carrying out this review. The first thing that we would say, and it's been really strong coming back, is about in each individual service that's out there, is the passion for improving outcomes in the lives of our infants, children and young people. There's nobody out there working in children's services that doesn't have that passion. And one of the comments, back to us is, if we can get this right, the same people that we have just now are going to be an absolutely force to be reckoned with in terms of making sure we have that focus on our young folk. We'll look a bit, in terms of our existing arrangements. Our existing arrangements go back to 2015. So that was shortly after we had the Leisure Trust, the Health and Social Care Partnership and Vibrant Communities all formed. So they go back almost a decade and a lot's happened in that decade. As well as things bedding in, we've also obviously had a pandemic and we've had a range of other things that are cross-cutting that come forward to us. So the promise is everybody's responsibility. The Convention of the Rights of the Child is everybody's responsibility. Doing something about children living in families that are experiencing poverty is everybody's responsibility. And they're very specific things like additional support needs for our children out with their school, who maybe don't need direct, like social work involvement. They can fall in the middle of things. And we need to look at how we address that. So they're the types of things we've been talking about, how we do that. In terms of how the review was carried out, it was a review of all the partnership documents. So we went back and looked at how the partnership has developed, the Children and Young People Strategic Partnership. and look at a literature review of what's best practice out there in a modern context of how we do that. There's been a lot of reviews carried out in terms of children's services, some of them fairly recently and specifically, around the National Care Service. The summary every time was the actual structures don't matter. What actually matters is the people. What actually matters is collaborative leadership and how we take things forward. So it's not about structures, it's about how we work together. There were 23 interview sessions with officers across the Children and Young People's Partnership, with the third sector, NHS, and importantly with young people and parents as well. We spent time with 3 other local authorities with different structures, talking to them about what they can do and what their challenges are. And again, that's all detailed within the report. And also for completeness, we went out with a stakeholder survey to ask people how they felt working within that. And importantly, to close some of the loops, as you'll remember, we previously had a report from the Alliance in terms of how we work with children and young people with additional support needs. Well, again, we've worked along with them in developing a film and a feedback from the parents and the young people about how they find we have engaged with them going forward and how we have done that communication. So that's what we did. What we found was that the structures and governance that have grown up over the years need reviewed. They need modernised for our current time. And maybe some have grown a bit unwieldy in terms of number of meetings that people are attending. So there's a bit about how we change some of that. So the people with these skills and talents are more focused and engaging with our young people rather than, going to meetings. We spoke about how we can have that collaborative leadership and courageous leadership. Courageous leadership, maybe sometimes saying that we don't always get it right, and maybe sometimes saying, that we don't know all the answers and we need to ask that somewhere else. And how we can have the relationships and trust across collaborative leadership. Although I'm saying that about children's services, that could be about any service within the council, I have to say to you. We have to look at how we communicate what we're trying to do, both internally and externally, and we need to make sure we're making best use of all the data that we've got there. We need to plan together around how we make budgets and make decisions together. So how do we make sure that anything that we spend inside a service or cross-cutting is actually to the absolute best benefit of our children and young people? And when I say that, that cross-cuts all the reviews that I'm talking about today, not just this one specific one that we've led. How do we make sure, particularly at a point with the Conventions of the Rights of the Child, that really there's proper engagement, that young people feel involved in terms of any decisions that impact on them? And how do we work together in terms of training and development across all our services within that community planning partnership to make sure that we build up the relationships? So what we're looking at is something focused on improving outcomes, focused on children in a more cohesive and coordinated way is tasked with, making sure that we can go forward. So the recommendations that come out of that, with a lot of discussions about, so if we've got all these cross-cutting services, how do we do that? How do we have someone that's almost dispassionate? And I was almost using, a word like, do we need, almost someone separate from the political leadership we already have around children and young people? Do we need someone that is almost like a children's commissioner within the services, no direct service, responsibility? I spoke to a number of my colleagues around the country about that, and they just looked at me and said, "Aye, Eddie, that'll be you for that." And therefore, when we look to create an executive officers group of children and young people, I would propose that I took on chair of that and worked closely with our senior colleagues, to actually make sure that things are truly cost-cutting. And let's be upfront and say this is about our integrated children's services. This is about our focus on children. The meetings group below that, it's not for me to get involved in detail. We have very senior officers here, but we need to make sure our meetings below that are focused on what we think is important and what we've agreed is important. We also don't have within our structures just now, dedicated capacity in terms of leadership and coordination of integrated children's services. That was something that was taken out back in 2015-16 in terms of that. So within community planning, we'll look to make sure that we have the right capacity there, not to manage anyone, but to make sure that we coordinate that. And about that honesty, that promote that culture that values the transparency, mutual respect and mutual responsibility. And we spoke about training together. So there are a number of recommendations that we put there in terms of our children's services review. It's something that is overall is about celebrating the passion that people have in East Ayrshire to support our children and make sure that we coordinate that in a proper way for best effect. So with that, Provost, with your agreement, I'll stop and we'll be happy to take any questions on that first review in terms of children's services.
Thanks, Eddie. Well, folks, I hope that's okay with the way the format this is today. Eddie's introduced that part of the paper that Eddie's going to be leading on, and now it's open to yourselves. Deputy Provost.
Provost. Eddie, I was just to wonder, can I seek comfort in that you'll be gaining views from the Children and Young People's Cabinet as well as that of senior officers, so that the voice of children and young people could be properly integrated into the decisions?
Absolutely. I mean, as of next month, not only is it, and Signer spoke to Children and Young People's Cabinet, so not only is it really informative to do that, to hear their perspective, and the one thing they asked of us is that we fed back clearer to them when we get their views, how it's been taken on board. But indeed, as of next month, it's a legal requirement that we actually do that. So yes, one of the things absolutely that we will be doing is making sure not just officers, but our children and young people, our appropriate parents, and of course, yourself and other elected members who have leadership around children's services are fully engaged in terms of how we take things forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Hi, Eddie, thanks. Just obviously we've got loads of partners that sit within the third sector, so I'm just seeking clarification that they will also be sitting at the table when this comes to fruition.
Thanks, Councillor Stewart. And the simple answer to that is yes. Again, that we all engage in different ways with our children and young people, and that some of the engagement that we see through the third sector is like some of the services like your other head, in terms of the zone, Yip World, Centre Stage, there are a whole range of services out there that engage directly, with whole families and local communities. And again, some of our models already, that try to address that, but making sure that they have a right say at the table is going to be important for us going forward within this.
Thank you. Leader.
Thanks. Elaine's and Claire's kind of preempted something I was going to say, but I think it's essential. They do take the Children and Young People's Cabinet and the third sector, and you mentioned it then, elected members. It's just to maybe speak a wee bit more about how you involved elected members in these conversations that we need to have. I think there needs to be just, if you wouldn't mind, Eddie. I think, we agree with the broad direction of travel here, but just I think elected members would be interested in how they work with within these reviews.
I think, obviously we have already Claire's leadership in terms of, being that champion for young people. And then we have, Councillor Cowan in terms of spokesperson. We have the wellbeing, aspects in terms of that. So again, it's something that we need to make sure, the same as we have talk about at an officer level, the strategic leadership for children. I think we also need to make sure that we have the discussions, across, our political leads as well. Clearly, the model that we have for that is cabinet, in terms of that. So we'll make sure that we do that too. But we're open for the discussions. I think, the changes that we're coming forward to is in terms of some of the resource challenges we have, in terms of how we do impact assessments. and keep a particular focus on impact assessments on children and families is going to be something that engages us all, you know, like in terms of that. And I think it's something we will continue to do, you know. So it is one of our challenges that, you know, and this is not just a local challenge, this is a national challenge. You know, some of the work you then see around children, because children impact across a whole lot of portfolios, you could get lost. And actually what we're doing here is making sure they don't get lost. It's the child that stays at the centre of this, and our young people and our infants.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Linda Maben.
Thank you. Point 7 on the recommendations, Eddie. It's asking promote a culture that values transparency, etc. Why do we need to promote this? Should this not already be something that is in place and is embraced by all service providers?
I think, you know, what we need is different services get given different targets, and they can be judged on different outcomes. And actually, there's a line within the report that says there may be some areas we need to focus a bit less on, and actually, you know, look at other areas. So if you're doing excellent in one area and you're doing really poor in another, we might have to shift a bit of resource and actually equalise that up. And it's that bit about having honest conversations across that. So rather than be focused on your own service outcomes and sometimes judged on your own service outcomes externally, I think we need to be honest and say, how do we make sure that overall the outcomes actually meet the needs of children? What's the best impact overall for that? And feel safe getting into meetings and actually really putting perspectives forward around that. So that's something I think is important. Each of the people we speak to individually would absolutely show these values. It's when you do it collectively. It's how you bring together people collectively to feel, and I used that term earlier and I'll use it again, the courageous leadership, so that when you come together, actually being open and a bit vulnerable at times, you know, to actually say, how do we bring it together? That's what I'm trying to get at there.
Okay, folks. There's no... Oh, Councillor Peter Maben.
Thank you, Provost. Page 77, there's about 10 or a dozen paragraphs talking about collaborative work and collaborative leadership. The word collaborative is repeated and repeated and repeated. I'm wondering where we get the meat in the bones. Where does this get as a cost saving? Where's the incentive for the teams to be collaborative? How do we get the buy-in? Because there's no money. If you do this in the private sector and you want your team to buy into collaboration and teamwork and an environment, then there's got to be something in it for them. You're talking about some kind of incentive. How do we incentivise folk to be collaborative and do better?
So the folk who work with our children don't need that financial incentive. What they need is the incentive and the belief that what we are doing is the right thing for our children with the resources we have available, and the best things for our children with the resources that we have available. So sometimes this will be about, there are a couple of different areas where we do get resources down that sit centrally. So how do we make sure we use the resources centrally? But more importantly than that, how do we make sure the big budgets that we have, you know, within the services, that they're focused on it? So the collaboration in this instance isn't specifically about, you know, like saving the money. The collaboration here is about how are we assured that we're getting the best outcomes for our children. And I can assure you, for the people that we're talking about in leading children's services here, they need no more than that. You know, that is their purpose. Many of them have spent their whole careers trying to do that. All we're trying to do is take that from anything that can feel like a service focus to a child-centred focus overall in that whole family context and community context.
Thank you. Folks, if we're okay with that section, I can't see any further applications to speak. Okay, so we accept the paper from A1. We're calling it A1 for this one. So we're accepting that part. Okay. We're going to move on to A2 now, and I'll bring in Richard, Deputy Chief Executive, to speak about leisure and cultural services.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, members. Purpose of this report is to advise Council of the outcomes of the cross-cutting strategic review of leisure and cultural services. And as Eddie has done in terms of children's services, I'd like to put on record my thanks to colleagues Claire Kavanagh and Kirsty Spence for their help and support in terms of taking this very detailed piece of work forward. I think it's also important, members, to mention that given the size and scale and complexity of the pieces of work, the various elements that have been included in this review, that we've taken a very much a multi-agency working group approach to this in terms of a number of colleagues being around the table trying to help support and shape the direction of travel. The paper seeks endorsement for recommendations arising from the review prior to a further programme of consultation staff engagement sessions. I'll speak a little bit more about that in a second. Members will see from paragraphs 3 to 9 that the cross-cutting strategic review for leisure and cultural services has been developed with full consideration of the essential requirements of the best value review and as set out in our Council's corporate best value service review guidance. In taking forward the review, we've also utilised national strategic tools such as Sport Scotland's facilities planning model and aligned with other reviews, we've assessed similar services within other local authority areas and taken cognizance of key national strategic reviews such as the National Review of Public Health and the National Review of Community Learning and Development. The scope of this review was to assess the current provision of leisure and cultural services within East Ayrshire. The review explored and evaluated current service delivery in relation to availability, accessibility, quality, and current participation and engagement levels. And from paragraphs 10 to 15, we reflect on the on the financial pressures faced by us as a council, and again has been touched on by the Chief Executive. Critical drivers for the review, therefore, have been very much focused on the following. Firstly, the importance of identifying ways of sustaining early intervention and preventative activities, aligned with East Ayrshire's long-standing successful approach to delivering the core principles of the Christie Commission in order that these services can survive in an increasingly challenging current and future fiscal climate. Secondly, identifying ways of improving services within the scope by creating better synergies and removing duplication. Thirdly, contributing to the Council's medium-term financial strategy in identifying significant savings and also taking cognizance of current in-year pressures. And finally, sustaining and protecting, where possible, a highly skilled and high-performing workforce across all services included in the scope of this review. Throughout the review, the working groups identified elements of duplication of activities and opportunities to enhance synergies and the inclusion of commercial activities that would support the development of new income streams, which are critical if we are to be successful in both sustaining the preventative services and delivering the savings to the Council. Premised, therefore, on the aforementioned, the following services were identified as being in scope. As part of the current education setting, instrumental music, creative minds and outdoor education. From the current facilities and property management team, corporate catering and community catering. As part of the current vibrant communities team, play and early intervention, sport, people, young people and diversion, the community health and activity team, the older people's wellbeing team, life skills and inclusion, and the communities team. Also, we looked at the services that are currently delivered through the Galleon Leisure Centre Trust, Visions Leisure Centre, and East Ayrshire Leisure Trust as well. From paragraphs 25 to 129, we capture the review process across education, community and corporate catering, vibrant communities, East Ayrshire Leisure Trust, the Galleon and Visions Leisure Centre, which collectively make up our proposals and recommendations. I don't propose to go through each and every service area, members, within this summary, and the detail is captured in the report. But it's important for members to note that throughout the Leisure and Culture Review, we very much focused on the current key themes, and some examples for your consideration are as follows. In terms of sustaining services, the work that vibrant communities deliver in relation to preventative activity. From our research, we've seen many examples where these important services are the first to be reduced or removed altogether when savings are required because finite resource needs to target crisis management and early intervention. Also, in terms of sustaining services, the facilities planning model that we delivered in partnership with Sport Scotland looked at the range of leisure and sport services and provision that's delivered across the region, and particularly in regard to the proposals aligned with Vision's Leisure Centre and the recent changes in regard to service delivery within that area in regard to Auchinleck Leisure Centre, the strategic importance of Vision's Leisure Centre in regard to its future sustainable operation, which meets the needs of its local community, is critical. And there's been a significant element of work done since members discussed and debated Vision's Leisure Centre in this chamber a number of months ago to make sure that that forms part of the proposals and is done so in a positive and sustainable way. Secondly, improving services, and the example there is creating greater synergies within a performing arts and cultural setting by firstly maintaining current service delivery, but also then aligning our successful music instruction and creative minds service with broader cultural work and opportunities to align this work with our community partners and within our significant capital investment in the Palace Theatre, and creating a cultural development pathway for our young people that ultimately leads to greater career opportunities. Thirdly, producing significant savings whilst protecting jobs. The creation of a trading subsidiary within East Ayrshire Leisure Trust, supported by the proposed transfer of our commercial catering team, provides a fantastic opportunity to develop events and hospitality provision within the region's most stunning settings, such as Dean Castle, and with a significant new revenue stream, which helps and supports the sustainability of our services moving forward. Paragraphs 142 to 146 inclusive present the financial implications of the review, including the 5-year projection, which will be supported by East Ayrshire Leisure Trust Profile Savings Plan, which reflects the establishment of the performance and trading subsidiary. And this fiscal projection presents a saving to the Council of £1.8 million by 29/30. As detailed from paragraphs 135 to 139, the proposals presented will result in the transfer of 104.57 FTE posts from the Council to East Ayrshire Leisure Trusts, and all these members of staff employees will be subject to transfer of undertakings protection of employment legislation. There have been a number of staff engagement meetings where trade union colleagues have been present, and further discussions with trade unions on the cross-cutting reviews have taken place at collective bargaining meeting and at our central joint consultative committee. We've committed to continuing further engagement, which will take place between now and officers reporting back to members in October, a timescale which has been extended to ensure staff who are not at work over the school summer holiday period can have meaningful engagement moving forward. In summary, members, the proposed new approach to deliver leisure, community, wellbeing and life skill services will ensure that valuable services are improved, developed and sustained at a time of increasing public fiscal pressures. And the recommendations for your consideration, members, are presented at page 93 of the report. Happy to take questions through you, colleague Provost, and appreciate we've got colleagues Annika Friel and Linda in the room, obviously, who have had an input and supported me in this process. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks very much, Richard. Folks, we'll open it out. Leader.
Thanks, Richard. Just maybe if you could speak a wee bit more about the performance and trading subsidiary. I think it's important that there's some feedback. Elected members are included within that. I think it's essential as we can continue not just to maintain our services, but in some cases where we can. You mentioned the Grand Holland Palace, where we can grow services. We know there's other areas where we've attracted, some organisations have attracted, funding elsewhere. Killing the community and Cumnock Juniors attracted some funding from the government last week. So there's all these opportunities spring up all the time. So it's important that we use these opportunities and use that through the trading arm. It becomes more and more important to us. So how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Through you, Provost. Clearly, the proposed development of a trading subsidiary within East Ayrshire Leisure Trust is critical in terms of the fiscal elements of the review that's presented for members' consideration. I'll maybe in a second, if through you, Provost, and with your blessing, ask Annika to comment further in terms of some of the Trust's growth plan ambitions in regard to the trading subsidiary. But certainly it's a direction of travel that many trusts, and I use the word trust as opposed to leisure and sport, because most trusts now have moved into this broader community life skills and well-being agenda, and that's certainly been the direction of travel within East Ayrshire for a period of time. And to therefore develop a trading subsidiary with the abilities to develop significant revenue funding streams that can then be used to offset and subsidise services that we would normally require to subsidise ourselves from core revenue budgets is critical in terms of how we move that service forward. Annika and I and the team, the finance teams on both sides, have spent a significant amount of time working on that financial profile to make sure the numbers that are presented within the review we believe are sustainable and deliverable. And that is indeed the case through that range of different services around hospitality, event management and catering provision. But with your blessing, Provost, and if Annika wishes to add to that, I'd welcome the opportunity for her to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Excuse me, I'm a wee bit croaky this morning, so bear with me. A trading subsidiary, most leisure trusts in Scotland already have a trading subsidiary. We're one of the last, which goes against the grain for us as an organisation, but one of the last to create a trading subsidiary. At the moment, as a charity, we can trade, but our trading needs to be very much linked to our primary function as a charity. So we're limited in what we can do in terms of events and hospitality. For example, the bars and the catering within the Palace and Grand Hall can only function during show times because they have to be related to the show. The development we're doing with the Palace and Grand Hall, we're looking to expand that so that these venues are open all day and can act as a visitor attraction, but also can then generate income through commercial activities. We're not able to do that as a charity. We have to find another means to do that. So that's why the trading subsidiary is really important to us, because we need to exploit as many, and I use the word exploit in the best possible sense, as many commercial activities as we can so that we can reinvest in our charitable aims and our free and affordable services. We also, as you know, are starting to work far more in events. We've got an events programme, a strategic programme for events. At the moment, we use outside events companies for managing our big scale events like Starry Nights. That money goes out of the region. We bring in food vendors. That's all managed by events companies from Glasgow and Edinburgh. So again, the food vendors are from out with the region and that money leaves the region. So the aim of the subsidiary is to keep the money in East Ayrshire, reinvest in the services and to try and grow the services and develop them further. We're looking to do more than the other subsidiaries aligned to most trusts. We're doing more. We want to do more than just hospitality and catering. We're ambitious. We want to see real growth in this area so that we can continue to sustain the services that are so important to our community.
Yep, great. Councillor Linda Maben.
Thank you, Provost. Richard, could I take you to the recommendations? I'm looking at page 39, just the first lot in point 5, where you're asking to endorse the transfer of vibrant communities to East Ayrshire Leisure premise and further staff engagement. I don't think at this point I would feel comfortable with an endorsement until the actual engagement had taken place. And just really to ask that we could get that engagement done before any further decisions are made and brought back to members. And can I make one more point? Sorry. point 13 about the financial proposals, this is just a question. Is the projected savings of 1.8 million, is that the only savings that will be made? And I'm right in saying that that's by like 1.8 million in total by 29/30? Yes, thanks.
Thanks, Provost. And I'll just intertwine here in terms of the word endorse, because a number of members have spoke to us about the word endorse. And if I just expand and be really clear about what we meet with that. We have been trying to get a right balance of how much do we take forward some of these reviews before we come to members, and how much do we come and get authority for members to do some of the engagement. So by the word endorse, actually what we mean is we're seeking agreement to go out and consult and engage in the proposals and bring any decisions back in October. So that's, for clarity for me in expanding that word endorse. It's why we didn't use the normal word agree, because normally agree and use would be saying to us, yep, go ahead and do that. That's not what we're asking. We're asking you to say, here are a direction of travels. Like we want to go down this direction of travel. We want to go out and speak to people about that direction of travel, and then we will come back and ask for decisions of you at a later time. We felt it would be wrong to go too far down a direction of travel without coming and getting, clarity and that transparency I kind of spoke about in the last review, from members about where are we going and what we doing. We can see already, with the low level of engagement that we tried to proactively do around this, that it really has, caused anxiety in a range of people, when actually, in most of these things here, in terms of the frontline delivery, there is no change to the frontline delivery. So that's the word endorse. Whether we got the words right or not is another thing. But again, for clarity, we're seeking agreement for you as members for this direction of travel, that we know we need to go out now and consult more widely and engage with folk involved with the proposals and come back to you in October, as Richard said, making sure that we didn't, initially we were looking at August, but that wasn't right, because folk who are on term time wouldn't be able to engage properly with that, and we'll come back likely in October, Council, with further details of anything there. So just around that very specific, because I know a number of members have been asking about that word endorse.
Okay. No, that's all right. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, thanks, Eddie. No, that's fine. But just the other point about the financial, I think Richard did nod his head, but I can't actually see right. So
Yeah, Richard.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Holland. So yeah, I mean, the figures presented at para 143 show that the savings then are cumulative. They build up over that 5-year period to a sum total of 1.8 million that in effect the management fee would reduce by. The reason they're done as such is to make sure it's sustainable and to make sure that in establishing a trading arm for the trust, it builds up the business over that period, and therefore it's presented as such in that way. Again, probably just to reaffirm the starting point in terms of the ethos we used around the finances. Recognising that the figure we've got in terms of a corporate council saving, as Eddie mentioned earlier, of 27 million over the next 2 financial years. My in-year budget pressures within communities and economy are in advance of £3.7 million, and I'll be coming back to members later this year with a recovery plan, seeking your support and consideration around how we address that funding gap. So in essence, this proposal not only identifies and projects savings of 1.8 million, albeit over a phased period, it sustains and protects the services that without doubt would require to form part of that savings programme if members were otherwise minded.
Okay, thanks. I've got Leader, then Councillor John McGee, then Councillor Ian Linton. Leader.
Thanks, Provost. No, I think Linda made a point well, and I think, as you said, Eddie, I think a number of us felt the same way. We're unsure of that word endorse. And I think, certainly I know that was the kind of broad feeling within our group, but I think given your explanation, I think we can take comfort for that. And I'm not really sure if any further wording, just maybe reassures people that wee bit further, but I'm really, that we are agreeing to the direction of travel, and that's helpful as you need to do this work. And I'll just leave that out there just now.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Councillor McGee.
Aye, thanks, Provost. My question is regarding, I need to go back to paper A1 just for a wee second. The Deputy Provost made a good point regarding talking to young people's cabinet. And the Chief Executive made the point that in the future that will be a legal requirement. And then I'm paraphrasing Eddie at the moment here, but he talked about fully consult and engage, and then talked about consultation. But in this paper A2, I don't see one single mention of meaningful consultation. Don't see it at all. And meaningful consultation is a legal requirement. And I think our trade unions have made that point that there hasn't been meaningful consultation. And I take the point that maybe this is the time for meaningful consultation to start, although in my opinion it's far too late in the day. But to go back to Councillor Linda Maben's point, I think if we are already endorsing the direction of travel prior to meaningful consultation, which is a legal requirement, then it would look to me as if the decision is already made, thereby meaning that only meaningful consultation wasn't real and meaningful as in the legal requirement. And I think I've got a real concern with that. I just notice, if you could just bear with me a second, there will be a period of robust and meaningful engagement. That's mentioned 3 times. But no meaningful consultation, or maybe I'm playing the words or semantics. Why can we not just use the word as it's actually supposed to be? Meaningful consultation, and talk to our trade unions in a proper way. Thank you.
Richard. And
then thanks, Provost. Thanks, Councillor McGee. I absolutely take on board your comments, Councillor. I mean, I think from our perspective, the work we've done thus far, in terms of the 4 staff meetings we've had, the numerous discussions we've had with joint trade unions, have been genuine and meaningful in terms of the proposed direction of travel. But there is an absolute commitment moving forward from today, given the extended timeline up until October, that those discussions happen. They're broken down to each of the specific service groups and users as presented in the paper as proposals, and that is done in advance of asking members to agree a direction of travel and support proposals which will come forward in October.
Yeah, David.
At first, I was just going to quote from paragraph 139, but that's clearly where Councillor McGee's quoting from. That's the human resources implications section of the paper. As colleagues have said, and not to prolong matters, there has been a degree of informal consultation. Members asked senior management to carry out 5 strategic reviews. The outputs from these could have been anything from no proposals whatsoever on any or all reviews to a wide range of proposals such as you have in front of you. As colleagues have been at pains to point out, it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg, but having been asked to undertake those reviews, it seems appropriate to bring back something of this potential width and depth to Council for Council to support the direction of travel. And that's what has been asked. Whatever the verb, whether it's agree, endorse, support, whatever, there are 2 important caveats. In terms of what will happen next, 1, there will be full formal consultation with the trade unions and all affected staff groups from these and any other proposals that Council may approve today. 2, there will be a paper back to Council with the outcome of that consultation before Council's been asked to actually agree any implementation of any the proposals and any implementation of any proposals. To give members a bit of comfort, if you think of the situation in terms of the school's consultation, not to give Linda a relapse, we're not launching one just now, but in terms of the schools consultation legislation, there is a legal requirement for the council through Cabinet to put its hand to and endorse or agree for the purposes of consultation proposals to either rebuild or relocate a school, whatever. This is a non-statutory process, but it's exactly the same approach that's been proposed. Council has been asked, as the organisation, as the employer of all these affected staff groups and others, to say yea or nay to the direction of travel, to put its hand to what is being proposed and allow senior management with a degree of confidence before they go and ruffle feathers and engage with staff groups to know that subject to that consultation and any issues that may throw up, and the reporting back of any issues that may throw up, and the resolution of any issues that may throw up, that Council is supportive of the direction, but absolutely subject to those caveats, the consultation and the reporting back. The minute will absolutely reflect that, as the report does, as the discussion does, and as colleague responses have, in order to give full Council and all members as much assurance as we can here that all has been asked is approval of the emerging direction of travel, because there's an awful lot still to be gone through, and if Council isn't supportive of it, it's better you tell us now than at the end of the process, and that's the ask, and it's no more or no less than that. Thanks, Chair.
Oh, thanks, David. John?
Aye, thanks, Provost. Might be a wee delay in me coming in here. I'm trying to enjoy myself up in Mull, but I think I totally take what David's saying there, and I accept the explanation. But why can we no write down the words meaningful consultation? How is that so difficult? I just don't understand it. And I think that we might change the Roman numerals 2 to say meaningful consultation to be conducted with trade unions regarding the transfer of the instrumental music tuition service to East Ayrshire Leisure Trust prior to a final report to full Council in October. I mean, if a duck's a duck, we say it's a duck. We don't just say it's a bird with webbed feet. And I can't understand the reluctance of this Council to talk about our trade unions and to say we're going to have meaningful consultation. That's what's required by law. And we just seem to be afraid to say the word. And it doesn't give me honest comfort that it's not written down there. And I would like to see it written down, and that we're going to undertake meaningful consultation. I think all councillors will have been inundated with emails from folk regarding the music tuition. And it's proved over years and years of evidence assessment how beneficial music is to young folk. It's not so long ago that we put another £50,000 into it, and the results back were all very positive. That was £50,000 we put in to schools. I think on Thank, Short Leys were at least 2 of them, and there were more undertake where attendance improved, lateness decreased, and I could go on and on about different things. So it's very important, and I think we should make that change, and let's say we're going to have meaningful consultation and no beat about the bush. Thank you.
Yep, Eddie, yep.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Councillor McGee. You know, I would draw members' attention to paragraphs 127 to 129 of the report, when we speak about our trade unions and we acknowledge, you know, our trade unions' response to some of the reviews. And in 129, we clearly put, it's therefore intended that, subject to approval of the reports, there will be a period of robust and meaningful engagement with the trade unions and effective employees over the summer period. Whether that word's engagement or consultation is of no concern, to any officer at this council. We would take the two. So we are happy, if it's the will of council to change a word from engagement to consultation, that's of no concern to us. David, you can.
Yeah. I think I'm not sure the paragraph you referred to. I was looking at 139 in terms of the human resources. I think to assure Councillor McGee and all councillors, there's no lack of will to recognise the trade unions are engaged. The report sets out there has already been discussions of collective bargaining and the central JCC, as well as the earlier sessions on the 21st, 23rd of May. That's seen as a continuing programme. The statement is there in terms of the commitment to robust and meaningful engagement. So if it's in one part of the report, there's absolutely no difficulty in moving it into the recommendations. The point I was going to make through you, Provost, is if council's so minded, I wouldn't just be amending recommendation 2. It's not just about the instrumental music service. There's a number of staff groups affected and there's a number of trade unions getting involved. So you may wish to extend the same courtesy to all staff groups. And if you want to be clear that any endorsement or agreement is subject to further meaningful and robust consultation with all staff groups, I would suggest that we take it as read, or you consider as council that apply in 3, which is premised, the current language premised in further staff engagement, 4, 5, and I think at least there's 3 others there. So I would suggest in terms of fairness and consistency, you would want to take the same approach with all staff groups and all unions.
No, well, listen, I'll pause there at the moment because that's a very important point. There's a lot of people wanting to get in. We'll get in. Everybody will get a chance to get in. But if there's a change of the wording that I think is the body of the Kirk's agreeing to, can we get that clear just now? So that there doesn't need to be any more discussion on that as we go into different areas of all of these reports. I think David's come up with a form of words. Could you elucidate those words, please, David?
I think it's exactly what was proposed by Councillor McGee. If I'm looking at page 93, which is paper A2, but it's the same recommendations, Roman numeral 2. Endorse the transfer of the instrumental music service to East Ayrshire Leisure Trust, subject to robust and meaningful consultation and engagement. And I think you take it as read that the report at recommendation 7, rather than repeat the report every time, it's all coming back in the report to council on the 31st of October anyway. But so the wording would be to endorse the transfer of each staff group, each of the individuals, and instead of premised in further staff engagement, that would be subject to formal, meaningful and robust consultation. And that would seem to meet the will of the majority of members, hopefully present.
Yeah. John, you raised this. Are you happy with those additions?
Right. Thanks, Provost. If I could just take up another 30 seconds of your time, just to say that I totally agree with David Mitchell regarding the other Roman numerals that are mentioned in this. I hadn't finished my whole point. I was just making one point at a time so as other people could come in. But it would have been my intention to make sure it was changed throughout for all the people involved because there are a number of services. Thank you.
Okay, no, thanks for that. Right, we need to get this clear, folks. Are we happy that the former words leader? Yep.
Thanks. I mean, that's what I've tried. I referred that. I'm struggling with a wee bit of the holiday, but that's what I was trying to refer to in my earlier comments because I don't think endorsement went far enough. I think, given there's been a lot of misinformation out there, you know, musical tuition is particularly one. I think we've really got to, you know, be a wee bit more explicit. Call the duck, as John says there, and just be quite explicit, but and do that for all the not just the musical tuition, right through the papers, that there will be full public and trade union consultation throughout.
Okay, no, I think we're clear with that part. And if you want to raise it when it comes through the papers, then we can do that. So we're okay with that. I'm going to carry on. Councillor Linton.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks, John, for your contribution there. I think just really to agree with what you've been saying, and also to I very much see this as the start. I think Eddie and Richard have been very clear in that. I mean, I think this is the start. But what we're agreeing today is to open up these discussions, and I think it's important that discussions do take place. For example, just on the point you raised there about the musical tuition, Annika and Richard came along to our group yesterday to talk, and I was unaware that since we've come back from COVID, that at one time East Ayrshire bands played the length and breadth of the country. winning awards here, there and everywhere, but that has sort of dried up. And Annika very clearly made the point yesterday that she very much hopes to see that being reintroduced. I just think that as the discussion progresses and more people become engaged, I think it can only be good for how people view the future.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGregor.
Thanks very much, Provost. This is also to do with the instrumental music service. Just I noted this morning that the Herald newspaper has run with its main headline questioning the legality of this. It seems to be based on the opinion of a single solicitor who has a background as an amateur musician. So I don't know how much weight that it would hold, but just to ask for some reassurance that there'll be no adverse consequences if this were to go ahead. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, David.
I think that might come as news to Highland Council, because I understand they've already done it there, but I would assure members more seriously that that matter will be taken forward, and if that should be an issue, that'll clearly be in the report to Council on the 31st of October, but that's not our understanding.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Provost. I mean, can I just ask Richard to clarify paragraph 129, please, where reference is made to the redevelopment of Cross House Library? Can we just have a wee bit more information about that? And is that a job loss there? I know there's a librarian in Cross House Library. And has the local community been consulted about this proposal? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Through you, Provost. Again, perhaps one for Annika to pick up the detail, but certainly the conversations and the discussions that we've had has been around enhancement and development of that facility in terms of the services that are currently provided, aligned with the outcomes of this review, not in relation to job losses in any way, shape or form. But maybe hand over to Annika for the detail through you, Provost.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Councillor Jones. No, absolutely no job losses in this one at all. The proposal is, as you know, it's a fantastic library space. It's a lovely big round, airy room. Library numbers are not as high as they once were, and so there's an opportunity working with the health service, because it's a shared site, to develop the space, not just for book lending and for all the chat groups and the book bug that we do in there, but to do other wellbeing activities in there as well. So to really grow that service and to make more use of the library space, which is lovely, building on what we already do in there, but also working closely with the NHS to do other wellbeing activities in there. There's been no consultation on that right now because it's a very initial proposal that's in the leisure facility strategy, but our aim it would be to do that over the next year to see what services the community actually want to put into that venue over and above the book borrowing that's already in there. Thank you.
Okay.
Lynn.
So really just for clarity, Cross House Library will remain, but the space will be shared between the council and the NHS. The library will remain.
That is the intention, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Oh, thank you very much, Provost. Thank you. I welcome Councillor McGee's intervention. There is, of course, the opportunity that Council could choose to replace the word endorse with note the proposals to transfer and ask that full and comprehensive, meaningful consultation takes place with staff and trade unions individually and collectively, and that the outcome is reported prior to members' decisions on this proposal. That is an option that Council could have, and I would certainly agree that it is across points in those recommendations for paper 2, points 2 to points 5, which covers all of the staff groups there. I think it is really important. I also think, again, David likened it to a schools consultation, and that being a statutory issue. I think, again, there was reference made to the fact that we have a young people's cabinet, given that many of these services are directly targeted at young people, given that they are also services which are targeted at young people who are actually users of those services. If we take all of that together, there is also the opportunity that consultation is not merely with the individuals directly involved in terms of our staff, but actually with the users of those services. And I think that that is something that, given that what we are looking to do is in all of the language that's used across this paper, being open, trustworthy, honest in terms of our conversations, I think that there is the opportunity for us to take the time that we are creating here to be able to engage as widely as possible and bring that all back, very much in parallel to the way that we see wider educational consultations take place. And I would ask that consideration was made to that.
Okay, thanks for that. We've got Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. I think what I'm about to say is more or less been covered by the last 10 minutes of input from colleagues. I'd basically thank you to Councillor McGee for his intervention there, because basically what he said, I think, had been reflected back in the SNP group chamber by a number of my colleagues. We had the same sort of feelings, specifically with regards instrumental music service. Initially, when I heard the proposal, I did have my own reservations, mainly because I'm the father of a daughter whose education experience was drastically enhanced by being part of the instrumental music service. I mean, I was one of those, or part of a couple, a mum and dad, who had to go and find money to buy clarinets and trombones and what have you, because Amy Louise was very, very involved at one point at Kilmarnock Academy in the wind section. And I also think we had to pay an extra monthly fee for the extra tuition as well. Can't remember the amount. It was a number of years ago. But the more I've heard this morning, I would much rather be allowing the officers to go ahead and bring a paper back to us in October that sustains the service, rather than, as Richard mentioned, I think, looking at a paper where the option in front of us is we need to cut this service. For me, the sustainability aspect, I would definitely now be on the side of allowing the officers to go ahead and do the work. And let us see what the proposal is. I think what everybody's saying is, bring it back to council, let us see what the full proposal is. And if that sustains the jobs, sustains the tuition for our young people, then it's got to be good. But I would much rather look at that type of paper than a paper where it's there in black and white. Do you or do you not want to, cut the service? Which would be if we did have to cut the service, it would be a great, great loss, because the instrumental music service, the tuition that the kids receive, the history of Ayrshire kids going on to the conservatoire, winning awards, winning trophies, we can't lose that. But it's how we keep it. And let's let the officers go and do the work.
Thank you. Leader.
Thanks. No, I agree with David and others have said here, and I think we're just endorsing a direction of travel, but we want to be absolutely clear we want to take folk on the journey with us in terms of what we're saying. And I think if we need to be explicit, we need to be explicit about that. But just the issue that Lillian raised about Chris House, absolutely. I think, there's been loads of uncertainty because of the falling numbers and usage of library, Chris House Library. What a great resource that is in the village. And I think, there's so much unutilised space. There must surely be kind of opportunities to see that, that facility grow rather than just, wither in the vine. So I think we've got to be really ambitious. And take the community there in Chris House with us, and let's build that resource and keep the library going, but see what else we can do in terms of well-being and work with the health service where we can. There's some great opportunities there if we give officers the kind of the opportunity to work with their communities to bring out some great proposals there.
Okay, thank you. We're going to Councillor Ingram.
Thanks very much. Yes, off the back of what the leader and Councillor Richardson was just saying, in regard to protecting and sustaining the instrumental music service for our kids, I was quite interested in hearing what benefits transferring of the instrumental music service to East Ayrshire Leisure Trust might bring as well. Obviously, there's a wee bit of anxiety about what this could mean in future, but what could be the potential benefits of it as well?
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Ingram. I think there's in essence two elements to this. The first one takes me back to that sort of general comment in terms of the service review recognising the critical importance of these services, including music instruction, and that's why they're in scope, because we want to protect and sustain these services moving forward in what will be an incredible challenging fiscal climate if we don't do that. So by moving into the proposed model and aligning it with the opportunities around investment in our capital estate, as we touched on previously, but also that linked to the development pathway in terms of that cultural offering aligned with career opportunities, employability opportunities. I think the opportunities there in terms of enhancement and development are absolutely clear. But also it gives us the time and space to be able to do that and sustain the current really important service provision that's there for our young people, and that's the outcome of the review. There's no service reduction proposed in any of the different elements of the service review. But again, through you, Provost, I don't know that Annika wants to add any comments to that in terms of some of the thinking around that cultural performance framework.
Thank you, Richard. I suppose the point is that the core service to the young people won't change. That will still be delivered free of charge to young people going forward. I think Councillor Mackay's point about asking the community what the priorities are is going to be really important for us. If we add any enhancements to services, we need to make sure they're the right things and the right things that there's a demand for and the community want to see. But in my head, I see a great pathway for young people in music. Music's really important. And the connection to our facilities and performance spaces will give them that added professional experience, both as performers but also in the technical side of music. There's also opportunities to look at an aligned service or a complementary service that looks at community music, doing more festivals, doing more events, giving the opportunity to people who don't benefit from the instrumental music, adult learners as well. So there's lots of opportunities that could come from this going forward.
Okay. No, thanks for that. Thank you, guys. Councillor Peter Maben.
Thank you, Provost. And thank you, Annika. That fills me with a lot of hope for the future with the possible opportunities that could be coming for kids with the music service. As when it comes to consultation, I agree with Councillor Maureen Mackay earlier saying that the most important people here are the young ones themselves who are getting the tuition, and we really need to consult with them. So if that's coming through the young people's cabinet, that would be brilliant. Also, parents will be filled with a bit of anxiety about what's going to happen with the music service here. Can we also add in some consultation with the parent councils of the schools at the same time and see what parents are thinking about this and how they want their children to be doing this learning? Thank you.
No, that's great. No, thanks for that. We've got Councillor Ian Linton.
Thanks, Provost. It was a separate issue. I think it's important that we acknowledge the significant role of both the Kilmarnock Leisure Trust and East Ayrshire Leisure Trust trustees, who will be asked on Thursday evening to endorse any decisions that are taken today. I think that's an important point to flag up. The trustees have got an important role in this process. Thank you.
Yes, reminder us all. Thank you, Ian. Councillor John McGee.
Just for a second, get back to the music tuition. I think it mentions in paragraph 32, I think it is, it mentions Highland Council, and I think it's High Life Highland. So I'm not suggesting that we should be copying them, but have we looked at their success or otherwise? Have we done some benchmarking on it? And is there anything that we could hear today regarding that?
Yeah, Richard, yeah.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Councillor McGee. The answer to the question, put simply, is yes. We've had discussions with Highland Council. Annika directly has been in discussion with them around the opportunities to enhance the service and learning from their experience as well. Again, through you, Provost, I think there's probably some specifics here that Annika would want to pick up on.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, we have. We've been liaising with them quite a lot through this. They've actually shared their business model with us as well for us to review and benchmark against, and we'll continue to do that over the period of time going forward. My conversations with them have all been very positive. Understandably, when they made this move, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, there was a lot of anxiety, but the instrumental music teachers themselves are actually reporting a positive experience now, and they're feeling that they're getting more recognition as a service than they did when they were with the council, because the council is such a big organisation, whereas the trust is smaller, so they have more of a voice. So it's been very positive for them, and that's what we're learning from, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, John. Yep, thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much, Provost. And again, Annika, thank you for these additional comments. I think it is really encouraging for us to hear just how comprehensive and how extensive the work is that has gone behind all of these papers. And I know that we as an authority very much like to be joining up as many initiatives, and Leader made reference to actually looking at, and I think Annika also did, in terms of how we actually keep money within East Ayrshire. And with reference to the additional opportunities, I note also that we have currently, and we hope it continues, additional funding to be based, yes, within Kilmarnock, but within Kilmarnock in the widest sense. And when I look forward to attending the We Make It Kilmarnock Festival that will happen on the 29th of this month, and look at the event and music and performance opportunities and coordination learning that there is within that, I really do hope that that acts as an excellent example of what the ongoing opportunities are that we can actually create across East Ayrshire as a whole for all of our young people. That is very much the way that we see ourselves as an authority, and it's great to hear about all of these possibilities and the way that they are being looked at collectively going forward. Thank you, Provost.
Well, thanks, Councillor Mackay, and well done for shouting out for the 29th. Please, everybody, try and go along with your families. And also the end of July is the week of Burns festivities of the first edition. There'll be a lot of live music there as well. Yeah. So please go along to that. Folks, are we okay? I can't see anybody else that wants to comment, wants to come in. That's a very good discussion. I'll just ask David again, sorry David, to get in with the point about the wording, because that's very important, and I think we all need to understand what's going to be changed in terms of the wording.
Subject to confirmation from council, I'll start with endorse, because I'm not quite sure if there's a majority view yet. But in terms of where the discussion is taking members, Provost, I think what members would wish to see as recommendations that would be along the lines of endorse. I think the word proposed is in there. Endorse the proposed transfer. And I'm only using number 2 first, but I think it would apply to 2, 3, 4 and 5. It would, but the same wording, so it would be endorse the proposed transfer of the instrumental music service to East Ayrshire Leisure Trust, subject to formal and meaningful consultation with the trade unions, and it's built into 7. I won't repeat it every time, but it's subject then to the report and coming back to council on the 31st. So it would be inviting council to endorse the proposed transfer subject to the formal and meaningful consultation to take place and be reported back in the 31st of October.
Thanks for that, David. Folks, we're clear about that. Online, yep, everybody got thumbs up there. And Claire's just reminded me we've got Doonfest on the 6th of July with live music. So please go along to that. Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Provost. Just a quick point on the wording there that David read out. Yes, I agree with obviously trade union being in there, but as it currently stands, it's premised on further staff engagement. If you have the wording trade union, I think we also need to actually have the word staff in that, because perhaps not every member of staff across vibrant communities or other areas may be necessarily members of trade unions. So I support the word trade union being in there, but I think we need to make the wording as wide as possible in a sense, so that we really do within these recommendations cover everything and everybody.
The intention wasn't through you, Provost, to exclude staff groups. We're going round in circles. The proposal, the recommendation at the moment was for consultation with all affected staff groups. We're splicing in the trade union specifically to reflect the will of council. It wasn't to the exclusion of staff groups, so happy to take the point. It would be endorsed the proposed transfer in all of them of the service to East Ayrshire Leisure Trust, subject to formal and meaningful consultation with the trade unions and affected staff groups where they're not necessarily involved with the trade unions. It was not the intention to dilute the offer.
Yeah, no, that's fair point. No, thank you. Thanks for that. And then we'll take one more, and then I'm going to move on, folks. So that's Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much. And again, David, it's just to say, and I hope that there's support for widening that consultation to include young people and parent groups as part of, so that would be an extra consultation and an extra bullet point, or if David didn't want to splice that within the proposal within the changes to points 2 to 5. But I think, you know, we should, if we are going to do this, let's do this as thoroughly as we possibly can.
Absolutely, and you know, as we've reflected before, you know, as of next month, it's a legal requirement that we actually engage with our children and, you know, young people around this. So I think we all know, you know, what members are saying to us in terms of this, and we'll find a formal words in the minutes to reflect, you know, that there will be, you know, like these are the directions of travel, subject to that meaningful consultation with all stakeholders that are involved with that, particularly our staff and any type of transfer, but whoever else that may be.
Okay, folks. Thanks for that. Now, I'm going to suggest maybe at 1:45 we'll maybe have a break. Is that okay? So I'm going to ask A3 to be spoken about, but maybe about 1:45 we'll have a break, if that's okay. Right, thank you. We'll go on to A3 now. Thank you. And that's Ian.
Yep, thanks, Provost. This report presents for members' consideration the outcomes and recommendations from the Financial Inclusion Review. In summary, the scope of the Financial Inclusion Review was to identify areas of duplication and streamline processes while ensuring the continued effective support for the communities of East Ayrshire. The review provided a specific focus on the income maximisation services provided by the Financial Inclusion Team based in Health and Social Care Partnership and the Universal Credit Support Team based in the Housing and Communities Service. However, it also considered the complementary commission services delivered by partners and in particular the Citizens Advice Bureau. The report describes the key functions of those services and provides contextual information, performance summaries, budget and workforce profiles for each. It also notes that the two council services considered as part of the review have developed and evolved over recent years with very different structures in place, but it is also apparent that there are clear similarities in terms of purpose, service delivery and referral pathways. Using established best value methodology and guidance, the findings of the review materialised around the benefits of creating a new integrated welfare rights service that would bring together both the Financial Inclusion Team and the Universal Credit Team. The comprehensive review found that the two key services delivering the Council's arrangements for income maximisation continue to provide valued and essential supports to the most disadvantaged and vulnerable in our communities. In doing so, they have secured significant financial gains for individuals and families across East Ayrshire and have contributed to the Council and wider Community Planning Partnership's strategic commitment to tackling poverty and inequality. However, they have also evolved in parallel for some time to the point where there are clear areas of overlap and duplication. Accordingly, the time is right to consider integrating these two high-performing teams to create a single welfare rights service. This will be an integrated service based within housing and communities with a single front door approach focused on addressing poverty and inequality in our communities, again aligned to the Council's strategic priorities. Flowing from the headline recommendation to create a new integrated welfare rights service, there were a number of other recommendations that, subject to approval by members, will now be taken forward through a managed transition and implementation phase with the intention of having the new service in place by the 1st of April 2025. The other recommendations that are set out in the report relate to assessing the impact on staff of short-term funding in accordance with the Council's human resources policies and procedures, exploring other opportunities to identify and secure alternative funding for the continuation of those projects most at risk and those with the greatest impact in delivering financial gains for individuals and families, including the work to review the Citizens Advice Bureau service level agreement, a commitment to review management systems and develop improvements to strengthen data collection, performance management and reporting, developing a consistent methodology for performance reporting based on a clear set of measures and indicators supported by effective systems and processes, and re-establishing practitioner networks and forums comprising all relevant statutory and third sector bodies. The review recognised the commitment, dedication and hard work of all employees across the financial inclusion team, the universal support team and the Citizens Advice Bureau. And to conclude, Provost, I would want to take this opportunity to record my appreciation to all involved for the work they do and for their valued contribution to this review. To the project team, and in particular Debbie Nicholl from Financial Inclusion, from John Stokes from Universal Credit Team, and Thomas Reid from the PMO team. Provost, the recommendations are presented for members' consideration at paragraph 2 of that report, and that's pages 144 and 145, and I'm happy to answer any questions members may have. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks very much, Ian. I'm going to open it out now, folks. Deputy Leader.
Thanks, Provost. Ian, a couple of questions just in relation to the early years Pathfinder. I think that's been invaluable. As you said, they're tackling poverty and the amount of gains, financial gains. I think it's in the region of £2.5 million in the paper. I understand that there possibly duplication with there with some of the services that would fund help towards that with CAB. So I think it's vital we establish that going forward where that duplication is and how we can do that. But I think it's crucial that we really look at that early years Pathfinder project and the protection of that going forward for us as a council. Paragraph 62 in the paper, it said that there's, and my understanding from this, but I might be wrong and I might be stand corrected, that there's a range of outreach services across East Ayrshire provided by CAB. My understanding is that that doesn't happen. Maybe get clarification on that.
Okay, thanks, Provost. Thanks, Councillor McMahon. So, yes, maybe a comment on your first point as well, if you don't mind as well. So early years and schools Pathfinder projects have been particularly successful. The council put non-recurring money into those services over a couple of years, extended it again there. But the continuation of that service is not proposed through this review, but the review does, I think, allow us to look at how we can do that differently through a combined integrated service. So that's one of the benefits, hopefully, of that integration of those two teams. Separately, on the CAB, then you'll see in the report, and there's quite a bit of detail around what the CAB has done for us. We do provide a significant grant to the CAB each year. part of the issue that materialised as part of the review was understanding that that service level agreement that goes along with that grant money has not been looked at for some time, and there is an opportunity to do that now. And it's with that very point in mind, Councillor McMahon, that you raised about the types of outreach services, what areas they're covering, the types of referrals that they are picking up that are separate. People are choosing to go to the CAB instead of coming to the council for advice in some instances. So the opportunity to look at all of that SLA is work that's already started. Colleagues in health and social care have already started that. And it is with the intention of getting to the point where there is much better clarity around what we are asking the CAB to do for the money that we provide to them. Thanks.
Thank you. And we've got Councillor Mackay.
Again, thank you, Provost. Ian, I think at some point we were given figures which indicated to us that it took us at least 6 months to actually fully train somebody that we brought into the service to deliver our welfare rights and our financial inclusion. So it was 6 months before they were actually delivering at the optimum. In other words, it's very much a technical job and there's a great deal of learning there. So on that basis, I would very much welcome the proposals that are here within the recommendations to integrate that team. Also at bullet point 8, where it talks about developing a consistent methodology for performance reporting. That rather implies that there's a weakness within the system at the moment. And certainly if a weakness has been identified, it is really important that we actually do strengthen that. And also with reference to CAB, I would hope that when the review is looking at the service level agreement, that we also take the opportunity to ensure that the reporting back is from CAB or any other commissioned groups is very much consistent with that consistent methodology that's required here, because I really do think that would make a very big difference going forward, making sure that we're actually judging different performance from different organisations on an equal footing, so as that again what we see is the public getting best value. Thanks.
Thanks again, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Mackay. So yes, the training for the staff within both of these teams is a significant investment in that development of individuals. The 6 months, yeah, it's certainly in that region for doing that. The review did highlight, Councillor Mackay, that one of the key challenges for particularly the financial inclusion team, not so much on the universal credit side, but was retaining staff and the turnover of staff and the vacancy management. And part of the issue for that was because we knew the time and the time that had to be invested in the training for staff, for them then to be retained, a lot of them being on fixed term contracts or temporary contracts. So that was a particular issue. We do see the integration as being an opportunity to strengthen that personal staff and organisational development aspect of the staffing and the workforce profile. Performance reporting, thanks, Councillor Mackay, you pick up a good point there. Rather than it being a weakness, I don't think I would describe it as a weakness, but it's certainly an area where there has been inconsistencies. I think we have come across, and actually in terms of how we are set up to record information, to produce reports and to report on performance, then I think again an integrated approach where we have consistency there would strengthen that. It's certainly an area that was quite prominent in the review. And lastly, on the CAB, yes, we would want, in the review of the service level agreement is very much, again, Councillor Mackay, an attempt to get to that consistent methodology of reporting back on what we expect to be delivered for that grant that we provide to them. They already provide performance reports back through the Grants Committee, I understand, and through the IJB, but we are taking the opportunity through this report, through this review, to tighten that again, to strengthen that. So thanks, Councillor Mackay.
No, thanks for that. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. Again, I think Councillor Mackay and Ian's answer probably covered this just in the last 2 or 3 minutes there. But what I was going to say was that, you know, we are in this situation where every pound's a prisoner, and it's the bottom line that counts, really. So if there is duplication here between the Universal Credit Team, the Financial Inclusion Team, and Citizens Advice Bureau, and I know they all do slightly different things, but yeah, just what Ian said, we need to be in a position where if there is duplication, and we're in the unfortunate position where as a council we need to take that duplication out, I think is when the paper comes back, elected members need to see something in front of them that where we can rate the performance of the Citizens Advice Bureau against our 2 internal teams, because, you know, we might amalgamate those 2 teams and we know what the Universal Credit teams bring to the table. We know the good performance, great performance of the Financial Inclusion Team. We know how much money they're generating for families in East Ayrshire. But it would only be fair to Citizens Advice Bureau, really, to see figures that we can compare in a fair way, so that if we do have to take out any duplication, we're doing it based on basically the bottom line. You know, we can see figures in black and white and who's performing the best. And in life, in the private sector and in the public sector, more and more, it's going to boil down to who's performing best, survives, basically, I think. And that's really where we're at. And it's terrible to say, but, you know, we're going to have more and more of these type of decisions, and we need to have good information in order to base that decision upon, if need be.
No, thanks, Councillor. I totally agree. And there are many similarities between those 3 service providers, CAB, Financial Inclusion, Universal Credit. There are some areas where they're distinct, and the CAB fills a particular role for us. So when we do come back with that level of performance reporting and comparison benchmarking between the 3, then there will be areas where we won't be comparing like for like, and we will need to make sure that that's a recognition when we do bring that back. But for the areas where there is commonality, then yes, I think it'll be important that members have that information, because we are, you know, following the public pound, providing that money as a grant to CAB. We do have to make sure that we're getting a return for that. So thanks.
Okay, folks, that's a good discussion. Leader?
I mean, some of the statistics that are coming through here in terms of Financial Inclusion Team and some of the gains that we're getting in, and that's keeping people, you know, to make sure they're getting benefits, to keep them out of cycles of debt, homelessness, and all these other cycles are not connected. But I can't help feeling that we're, you know, some of the universal credit payments, we're putting cash into people's pockets before the, you know, and it's, to me, some of that's the job of government. And, you know, I think there's still conversations there that we need to make sure that we're getting the money that our people are entitled to, you know, and it's, you know, we're doing government's job for them, and I think that's going to be kind of, to some degree, you know, and I think that's going to be acknowledged, and I think we've got to put more kind of pressure on where we can to make sure that we keep our people out of poverty where possible.
No, thanks for that. Good point. And Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. I'd just like to agree with what my colleagues have said previously. However, if we look at the partnership working starting at paragraph 64, we find out there's 20 other groups involved in these, some statutory and some voluntary. And when we're looking at signposting for our citizens, we're talking 20 different organisations plus the main 3 that we're talking about there. So any form of partnership working that will streamline that down so that we can get to paragraph 65, which is helping our communities and the poorest in our communities. If these are preventative papers, then I think that's got to be commended especially. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Just a comment in response. One of the themes of the review was we felt there had been a lot of momentum around having a practitioner partnership, a forum that brought all of them together prior to the pandemic. That was lost through the pandemic. We've not built that momentum back up again, but all of those partners are operating in that activity. They're all committed to reducing inequality and poverty. And one of the recommendations, as you'll see, is that we want to reconstitute, refresh that partnership forum, because there's so much of what that collective does makes a huge impact, and it hasn't always been as joined up as it perhaps could have been. So yeah, it's a good point in it, and it's one that we picked up on too. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Maben.
Thank you, Provost. I'm looking at page 150 and the flow chart there. Which is quite confusing to me. I take it that's all the different types of services coming out of it. Originally, it started a financial inclusion team with 11. It's saying core team, and the universal credit team is also 11, and there's also coordinators and managers. So I'm just wondering how this is going to finish up. How you're going to merge it all in different management structures, and I'm also concerned that we do maintain the link with the secondary schools, because that's fairly important. That's where a lot of the financial inclusion casework is coming from. So I hope that link is maintained. Thank you.
Thanks again, Provost. Thanks, Councillor. So 2 points there. One, in terms of the structure charts that is in the report. The other structure charts as they currently are. The report also describes, though, that so many of the positions in the financial inclusion team structure is fixed money. So that's non-recurring money. That's project-based money. So you'll see, in particularly the school-based Pathfinder and early years Pathfinder, the individuals in those positions will come to an end at the end of their contract. So they are fixed-term contract. So some of those jobs that are in that structure will stop at the end of the fixed-term contracts as well. But the intention behind the integration is with that expanded team, that actually there is opportunities within that expanded team without the sort of handcuffs on them around fixed funding for fixed projects, to put the resource where it's needed. And you're right, and we've already said just how successful those Pathfinders have been in schools and in early years. And your point about what it will look like. So we stopped short in the review of dictating the structure as part of what will happen next, the implementation phase, the transition to that new structure. That really will be a matter that myself, colleagues who have been involved in the review, along with Head of Housing and Communities and the Director of Health and Social Care, will all get to the point where we will have an integrated team that will bring together those elements. But the review didn't go into that level of detail to recommend the structure. It said this is the headline of integrating was as far as we went. It'll be a matter through the implementation phase between now and next year to get that structure agreed. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Provost.
Good, thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Provost. And it's really just to highlight, I've just been looking at the grants papers where they had a report for the CAB, and basically for Q4 they dealt with 1,315 benefit-related issues, and there was financial gains of just over £649,000 for Q4 alone. And also in terms of money advice and debt management for our people in East Ayrshire, they dealt with 252 debt inquiries, and that total managed debt was a total of £288,000. So citizens' advice, I would say, really are value to our population in East Ayrshire, but I understand the whole process about duplication and following the public pound. Thanks. It was just to make people aware of the figures. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McMahon.
Yeah, thank you. Just another question for Ian, just for clarification on the paper that's coming back after the back of the review. what would be the timeline for that to come back? Because I think part of that review, I think, should be into consideration the Pathfinder project and the cost that goes along with that. But if that finishes at September and it's out the equation as far as duplication goes, then we're automatically ruling that out before we look at anything else, I think.
So the decision to extend the Pathfinder was a decision that Council took in February as part of the budget proposal. So that was a 6-month extension. That's what we've based the review on. So that was the factual position. We've not made any recommendation in here for elected members to extend that. What we are saying is, as part of the transition, the integration of these two teams, that there may be opportunities in there to look at how we deploy resources differently without necessarily having to ask Council for more money to do that. So what will come back, I think, will be a reflection on that. The structure, the issue that Councillor Maben mentioned there is, what is the structure going to look like? So with that integrated team, how that is able to then support perhaps the schools-based Pathfinder work going forward, but you could apply the same to any of the other time-limited project-based work. So, for instance, the GP practice work that is already time-limited money as well. The support for some of the other projects, particularly through the Shared Prosperity Fund money. These are all things that have fixed-term funding associated with it. What we'd like to do is to have a much more consolidated, secure budgetary position. In contrast, the Universal Credit Team, mostly funded through HRA, but some general fund in there, they have recurring, permanent budgets with staff on permanent contracts. So what we want to do is make the best use of that total resource, which might fill. So when we do come back and there are recommendations, then we will hopefully have articulated that for elected members' consideration. Thanks.
Thanks, folks. Before we maybe have a wee recess, I'd like to ask Ian, in terms of the three services that we're going to work in partnership with, what's the communication side? If one section, say, may have staffing issues through sickness or maternity leave, what's the issue for communicating that an area in East Ayrshire doesn't fall out of the safety net in terms of support?
Yeah, thanks, Bro. So again, we see the integration of those two teams actually providing a strengthened resource to be able to deal with those variables. So where there is perhaps geographic-based staff or sector-based staff, and there are challenges there, as there are, then the integration of the two teams would provide a larger resource to be able to cover those. So actually, again, we think it's an opportunity to take some of that burden off of the management just now by allowing them to have that flexibility to move resources where they need it. Thanks.
No, that's great. Thanks, folks. If there's no other, I have been accused in the past of being too frugal with the time given for a recess. So I take that in the chin. No, you can't see it. So maybe 20 past, come back for 20 past. Is that okay? Thanks very much, guys. Thank you.
Ian, could you pause the recording, please? Thanks.